Welcome to Empowered Within, a soul-quenching, transformational podcast that will set your soul on fire through candid and inspiring conversations. Leading experts, celebrities, healers, and I share our journeys of how we've overcome challenges to living an empowered life from within. I'm your host, Jennifer Pilates. Welcome to another episode of Empowered Within. Hi, friends. Welcome to the show. Today's guest went from penniless immigrant to a successful business owner, generating over $500 million in retail sales following her passion for jewelry design. She's had her own TV show for the last 24 years on both HSN and ShopHQ, where she shares her jewelry designs with millions of viewers during her own monthly show. Welcome to the show, Victoria Wieck.
Thank you for inviting me. It's just going to be a lot of fun.
Yes, it is going to be a lot of fun. I'm so excited to have you. So, of course, like everyone wants to know, okay, girl, what's the story? How did you go from being in South Korea with, I believe it was $30 to where you are today? Because that, to me, is the most unbelievable, empowering, transformational story.
When we were in South Korea, actually, we did have more than $30. But when we landed in America, all of our money, assets, everything got frozen because at that time when we left South Korea, it was run by a dictator and people couldn't leave freely. We were told that America was the promised land and that all dreams come true in America. My dream did come true in the end, but I had to work really hard for it. The $30, I think in many ways, when we got all our assets frozen, there were a family of 7 for the $30. I think my father, he's not with us now, but he would tell you that was probably the greatest blessing that he has gotten because we had to start over. And we didn't have everything. We weren't super rich people. We were like upper middle class back there, so we had things. We had a driver and all that. But coming here, starting over, there was an urgency to learn the language, trying to get acclimated to American life. So we did that. I would say if I look back at how you transform yourself from somebody with less than $30, with no friends, when you speak no English, especially back then, you've got to think about 1972, America. America as a country, we just came through the Civil Rights Movement, the Vietnam War movement, all of that stuff was going on. So America was in turmoil, much like it is now. So when you speak no English, you actually have no friends. We had no jobs, all that stuff. I would say there are many things that contributed to eventually me finding my dream. By the way, my dream life at that time was just to be able to buy myself a used, and we're talking cheap used car, and get myself an apartment that I can afford. That was my dream life. That was like a home run scenario. I think I've overachieved that by now, but I would say
a little bit.
Yeah, I would say that when you are going from that to the 9 figures that I've generated eventually, you go through a lot of obstacles. I have been screwed over, betrayed by who I thought were friends or reputable people in business, personally, and everything else. But through it all, you have to think about every time there's a horrible thing that happens to you and you think it's devastating. In 1989, if somebody screwed me over with $3,000 invoice, that would have bankrupted me because I didn't have any money. When you think that everything you've ever worked for was just going to go out the window, personally and professionally, or one or the other or both, I always thought to myself, so where is the gift in this thing? Because there is always a silver lining with. My father used to say, no rain, no rainbow. And that's one thing. And the second thing is, no matter how horrible you think you are right now, many of you listening, you might have some times when you think like the world's come to an end. My world is coming to an end. It's just getting worse and everybody else is getting better. Think about the one single thing that you could do. Because if you are still alive and breathing and you still have your mind enough to think about what's wrong with your life and bitch about something, then you can still go find purpose in your life and make your life better because you're better off doing that. And so back in 72, I thought to myself, I was 12 going on 13. I thought to myself, my parents were going to work at 6 o'clock in the morning. So they literally left their 5 children. I was the oldest of the 5. So the youngest one was like a year old. And I had to take them on a city bus in Los Angeles, 3 different buses to drop them off the nursery, care. But the one thing I could do at that time was to learn to speak English. And they didn't have ESL classes. They didn't have English as a second language. There was nothing out there back then. So my father would circle like random words that were like no more than 5 letters. He would go to the dictionary and I would actually look for a dictionary English thing. So I learned it. throughout my life, I really carried myself on those two things. God didn't put me on earth so I can starve to death after coming to America. So I had to believe there was a purpose in my life. Second thing is, what is the one thing you could do that day, not someday in the future? And then the last thing is basically just, you really don't have a choice. When your choices are that simple, you either move forward or backward. It's simpler rather than having 20 choices. But do I want to become an artist, or do I want this job or that job? Our lives were simpler than that. So that's the story.
That is a beautiful story. So before you came, there was no English to learn when you were back in Korea then?
I was an avid reader. My mother wasn't all that. She was weak, like a lot of health issues, even when we were younger. So my father basically moved us to a little village, seaside village, where he thought the air was clearer and breezy. The weather was more mild, a lot like California. It's the most southern part of Korea. And it was so remote, we didn't actually get any TV signal. We had TVs, but the signals, it was very snowy. So I grew up in a world of my own. And so I would ask my parents to read to me. And so I read through my mom. When I was 3 years old, I started having her read. And then when I got older, I read for myself. So that habit of just reading, being curious about other cultures, being curious about other people, history, that has carried me, opened my imagination a lot. And of course, building my business, which has gone to over 35 different countries. I have traveled quite a bit since then, but no English. And you have to get, but I think all that worked out pretty well, because I think the one thing I will say about myself is I'm extremely accepting of, I'm very adaptable. So when I go to the Middle East versus wherever, South America, Europe, I'm able to be present there and just absorb what they have to offer and the beauty of where I'm at, as opposed to being judgmental about things. Mm-hmm. And so it helps me that way personally as well, because, you're always at peace. And when you don't judge people or judge things, like I really truly think everything that happens to you is a blessing.
I agree. We have a lot of the same philosophies. I'm always saying that there's a lesson and a blessing. Always. You just have to look for it. Some days it's not as easy to see, but it's there when you can just take that moment, quiet the body and mind, and be present and go, that's what that was about.
Yeah. And I think there are also in the books that I read, or I actually look for inspiration every day. So every Monday, I look for inspiration that's going to carry me over to the next week. In fact, I start looking for it on Sunday. And it's really interesting when you do that. But there are a couple that really have shaped me as a person, my family, and my brand, which is become pretty successful. One of them is one of those quotes is by Nelson Mandela. And it's one of the least known quotes by Nelson Mandela. And he said something to this was when you have to put this in context to who he was. He was in a prison cell for quite a few years. And they asked him about the impossible tasks, what came through his mind. And he said something to the effect that it all seemed impossible until it's done. And so when you think about that quote, you could think about things could look really impossible, maybe balancing time between your children and your, aging parents to your career, all this stuff is impossible. But in his mind, it all seemed impossible until it's done. And it all seems impossible until it's done. So when you think about it, I think to myself, okay, not getting it done is not an option, right? So I just, get rid of all the excuses. You start doing something because it will get done. And the other thing that I really live by, and this one actually shaped my brand, is Maya Angelou's quote. And it's something like, people will forget what you've said, people will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. In my jewelry business, it is all about the emotions, all about lifting them, memorializing those milestones like your weddings, anniversaries, and all that. So you really do have to make them feel special. That moment has to be so crystallized, and you're playing a part in that. All my marketing messages, all my branding things, and when I'm on TV, it's really about that customer. I'm so customer-centric that I try to delete the word I from a lot of my presentations. So you would try to use the word you like 5 times for every I. So instead of saying something like, oh my God, this is, so like if you're on TV, I was just on TV last Thursday, I think for 2 hours. When you're on TV presenting my jewelry, and I can go talk about something like, oh my God, I love the fact that summer is here, and I love the blues, and I love the blue colors, and I personally think the blues and the greens go great. And so I designed this incredible collection for you. So I'm using the word you many times. You sound like I love it so much, I'm going to share it with you. But if you said it the other way and you said something like, I just know that you love summer. And when every summertime, you guys love that blue because you tell, I can see it all over your, posts and everything else. You guys absolutely love the blues. And many of you wear them with the greens so beautifully. So this, collection is all about you. When you go out and get together with your friends, get together with your family, and you want to glow and sparkle a little bit and you want to save money, you can buy this and look great, feel great, and permeate that positivity. And you don't have to even spend a fortune for that. So I would use the word you 10 times for the two eyes I used. So again, and then when you actually really think about that, when you envision your customers on a fishing boat or a lake, or they're getting together with their friends, they're not going to wear the ostentatious pieces. They're going to wear things that are more demure, more fun. So you're designing pieces for that event. So again, like thinking about other people, even when you're trying to build your brand. And I have to tell you, Jennifer, I did well over $500 million. I just picked that number. It sticks if somebody actually sued me or something. I did this without $10,000 worth of advertising. So it's mostly word of mouth. It's mostly just grinding it out, understanding what the public wants, having a pulse on what they want, what they love, and how you can meet their needs. And do it humbly and without a lot of pretentiousness. So hopefully that resonates with at least one person out there in the audience.
Absolutely. It's very inspiring. What is one secret that has gotten you to this $500 million venture that you've put yourself in by following your passion? And that's the key, obviously, that you followed your passion with jewelry. And we want to know where that came from as well. But what's one secret that really brought it all home for you?
I hate to say this, but I think that for me, and I'm not going to say that this is, good for everybody, but for me, I built this business completely by accident because I started my company to spend time with my family. So basically, when I came, you guys got a quick story about when I first came to America. I was 12, almost 13 years old. And my parents both, had to get jobs. So they both left for work about 6:30 in the morning, and they never came home until about 11:30 or so. So I was like the mother to my younger siblings, those 5. And I went from having unlimited time with my mother, because my mom was a stay-at-home mom back there, and my father only worked like 4 days a week when we were back in Korea. So having unlimited time with my parents to having no parents from when we landed here until now, basically. And now I spend a lot of time with my mom. My father's not with us anymore. But so when I, graduated, I went to school. They kept telling me all the quickest path to your dreams, which was to get hyper educated, get a great job, keep on climbing the corporate ladder. So I tried all that, and I was emotionally suffocating because I felt like, oh my gosh, like I am abandoning my family to nannies and other people so that I could follow my dreams. Why can't I have both? So I decided that what's realistic for me was to make $3,000 a month. That was my home run by the time I was married and had kids. I thought to myself, if I can make $3,000 a month, but I could work 20 hours a week, I could have a decent career and be present with my kids. So when I started doing that, I realized 20 hours a week seems so little compared to trying to build a business. And as you're a small business person and you know how that works, you're working around the clock. And I thought, okay, this isn't working out too well. So when my kids slept at night, that's when I actually did a lot of my work. And so I ended up contacting like Harrods London, Galleries Lafayette, all the stores in Europe because they were 9 hours ahead of me. So 5 a.m. is like noon their time. So I actually opened those big stores in Europe first. And then once I started opening those, and when I was in Galleries Lafayette, Neiman Marcus and Saks wanted my stuff. And once I was in there, everybody else wanted my stuff. So pretty much I would say that having a balance and keeping your, just refusal to give up your priorities. I'm not suggesting to anybody that you are boneheaded about something or just be stubborn. I am an extremely flexible person when it comes to everything else in my life. But there are about 5 things that I just won't budge. Like one of those is my moral compass. I will never, ever, like nothing. Because I went from having almost everything to nothing, I always told myself I could live on nothing. And I'd rather live on nothing because it wasn't really that bad than to look back and think, oh, I had to cheat a few times here and there. I had to screw over a few people. I'm rich. Like, I didn't want to do that. And like I said, there was a gift in everything. So I refused. So the quality of my products, when I was on TV stations, I'm still on the ShopHQ, it's so tempting to just lower your quality by a few cents, $1. When you do 1 million pieces, I was going through sometimes 1 million pieces a year, and you were sacrificing $2. That's $2 million at the bottom line. But I didn't do that because I felt it's got my name on the box, and jewelry is something that you never throw away. So people might have it 50 years from now. And I don't want to see 15 million American women hate my guts. So moral compass, I would never budge on. And the other thing is my priorities were always the same. I know you're going to love this. So in Asia, when you ask people to define success, health comes first. It's 5 things. Health comes first. So success is defined as the perfect balance between these 5 things. One of them is health. The second thing in the order of importance is the quality of your relationships, like relationship with your mother, your children, your spouse, friends. And I think so health, relationship, longevity is one. Wisdom is another one. Not necessarily intelligence, but wisdom to know when you're on the right path, just a little bit more about instincts. And wealth comes last. So I follow that in order. I'm a health, and I'm not like an exercise freak, but I eat really healthy. I don't have a lot of vices other than coffee. And relationships are very important. I have an incredible family. And so money was the last thing in that spectrum. So I didn't actually even look for money. At some point, the money makes money, and the brand keeps on getting bigger, because the great thing about branding is like when they know you, your brand, they go, oh my God, that's a beautiful necklace. And they're like, where'd you get that? Oh my God, there's this great woman. Her name is Victoria, and she's on. You ought to check her out. And then that person tells 20 other people. So the brand kept on growing by itself. So I would say the secret to success is to not think too big, but believe in yourself. God gave every single person on this planet everything you need to succeed. So stop comparing yourself to anybody and don't compete with anyone. Just compete with you yesterday. You just want to be better than yourself yesterday, right?
There are many things people need to balance in their lives in order to maintain happiness and emotional health. You need to look after your romantic, spiritual, and physical needs to keep them in balance. When feeling down, seeing an intuitive advisor could be the optimal way to get back on track. An intuitive reading session could be the tool you need to reduce the ambient noise in your life and focus on things that truly matter, growing, finding clarity, and empowering your life. Head over to jenniferpilates.com to claim your special intuitive reading. Again, that's jenniferpilates.com.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. So
I give you zero. There's no discovery.
And that's the best advice. And that's truly the advice that we should all be living by. And I just think that, especially the last 10 to 15 years, everything just got mucked up and people forgot about morals and priorities and health and relationships, and things got out of whack. So I look at right now, like the last year or so, however long we're in what we're in this snow globe, everything's being shook up, and hopefully there's a lot more blessings that come out and a lot more goodness and a lot more moral compasses come to light versus people are working 80 hours a week and not looking at their family, not having family dinners, and people were forced to be with their children this last year or to have a family dinner. I look at all of that. The family time this past year alone, such a blessing.
Yeah, I think that, to be fair, the world was going in the wrong direction, and it was heading to all the wrong priorities. In the corporations really, prioritize only profits. And they were already shrinking, downsizing, people doing 7 people's jobs. All those things were happening. But I think during the pandemic, everything that was happening in your life got amplified. And so you can see, so the bitchy people got more bitter, and the happy people got happier. So I would say, on my podcast, I actually have a thing called How to Deal with Difficult People Like a Boss. And it's really interesting because some people are difficult. There are different reasons why people are difficult. And I would say that during the pandemic, things were going so great. The online businesses were online and TV retail just went through the roof. My business was up like 300% over last year. And I'm like, I don't know what happened. Like everything's selling all of a sudden again. And then my personal relationships, I already have very close relationship with my children and my mom. I talk to my mother like several times a day. I talk to my kids, every one of my kids several times a day. My kids meaning my natural children plus their spouses. And you know what? And I thought to myself, I feel so terrible. I feel so guilty. Like the world is suffering, but I'm not. And I just feel like something bad's going to happen to me. Or I need to go out and do something to help people. My daughter and her husband actually started delivering groceries and all this stuff. But I just think that happier people got happier because, like you said, we were forced to spend family time together and all that stuff. And the companies allowed all that to happen. So I would just say that in your search for happiness and freedom, emotional freedom, if you focus on all the right things, the money will come even when you're not looking. Because you're going to be glowing. You're going to be so good at what you do. You're going to look happy doing what you do. You're going to want to help people because, oh my God, you want to share it. And then you're going to just attract people. And that's the best way to, the other thing too is even if the money isn't coming, life living, doing what you love to do, when you want to do it with the people you love, that's priceless. This is America. You are not going to starve to death. Just believe in yourself for a little bit and give yourself time to work all these things out and you will get there. And to be honest with you, that's why I started my podcast because people started telling me, you should write a book. And, you should write a book. And I'm like, what for? Because I really didn't think I had anything special. People used to tell me, oh, your story's so inspiring. And I'm like, compared to Oprah Winfrey or, other people, I'm nothing. So I don't know. I'm not that kind of a pretentious person. And it worked for me, but I'm not sure it's going to work. And I'm not a judgmental person. I'm not a dictating kind of a person. I'm not an in-your-face person. I was just doing my thing. And then one day somebody walked up to me and said, why are you so selfish? And I'm like, me? Selfish? That's the last thing I wanted to hear. And he said, you know what? You have a duty to share. Your story is inspiring. And it doesn't cost you any money to share your story. So you now have that duty to do that. And I was like, you know what? Maybe you're right. I do. So that's when I started my podcast. It wasn't like I had no desire to grow my brand bigger. I had no desire to get my name out there. I just really started it so that I could share. The other thing I love about podcasting is like meeting amazing people like yourself that I would have never met otherwise. You know what I mean? And
Totally.
It's just amazing how much knowledge and energy and the positivity that's out. So I was like, oh my God, this is a lot of fun. So
I agree. It is so much fun. It's very addicting. I love it. Today's podcast is sponsored by JP Active Athleisure Wear, Pilates and yoga inspired apparel that combines style and versatility. JP Collections take you from the studio to the street, looking and feeling your greatest. With sizes ranging from 0 to 24, there is something for every beautiful shape and size. Discount promo codes will be available in today's show notes.
For you to have a jewelry line, you're going to have a bunch of samples. Each sample would cost like $100 just because gold and silver, is high. And then secondly, the actual master molds that they have to the sample making is somewhere between $300 to $1,200 per sample, depending on the complexity of it. So if you have 10 pieces, that's $12,000. That's not including the stuff. And you can't actually go somewhere with 10 pieces and show them anything because they expect to see hundreds. So I actually ended up having to sketch them out, really do watercolors and all this stuff. And then I had to go door to door. Like I went to the Neiman Marcus, all the different stores and ask the buyers, ask like the customers as well as the assistant department store buyers, like if they had this in real life, would they buy it? There's a lot of tips on how you can start the business risk-free. I wouldn't want you to risk anything now, even if you had the money to risk, because there's no need for it. So I offer a monthly seminar on those 10 key pillars that you need. You can come to victoriawick.com. It's VIC, like Queen Victoria, WIECK.com. And sign up for anything that's there. And otherwise, you can start listening to my podcast. And I have what I found out, and I'm sure you have too, is that because your podcast is all about transformation, which I love, because no matter how inspiring somebody is, how encouraging someone is, without action, there's no transformation. And we came from a manufacturing society to information age. That means that people with information got paid a lot of money for doing nothing but handling information. Today, people don't pay for information. It's all free out there on Google. So today, people pay for transformation, right? Because what do we do with that information? We all have access to very similar information now. So transformation to me is great. And people like yourself, whether it's transforming your health, how you think about your health, or how your health impacts your mind, body, how they're all aligned and connected, I think that's really important.
If I asked you, if you had to start again tomorrow, would you do and use the same strategy all over again? Or knowing what you know now, would you do something different?
There are many things that I would do differently. The first thing I would do differently is to net with other people. I didn't really have a lot of time at that time. I had 2 young kids that I was be a full-time mom for, plus my parents didn't speak a whole lot of English. So I would network. I would find a mentor. I would find podcasting didn't exist at that time, but it's not just my podcasts or Jennifer's podcast, but I think that podcasting industry in general, it's almost every podcast. It's all like a mastermind class packed into like a 30-minute class. It's free. So if I had to do it over, I would probably have used all the tools. If they existed, I would have used them all. I would have been listening to every business podcast out there, because every piece of information saves you time. And everybody's failures, even when you listen to somebody's podcast and it's all about failures and it's all about things that that didn't go well, somebody was bitching about it, you're still going to learn something. And so for me, even right now, you might find this surprising. After I've done 9 figures, I'm going to be close to 10. I still listen to 3 or 4 podcasts a day, every day. So when I get up first thing in the morning, while I'm like putting my makeup on, I have my AirPod in, and I'm listening to a couple of podcasts, the smaller podcasts where you are looking at average people with rich skills, very similar concerns and similar needs, having to pluck themselves out of the situation they're in, because that's the golden nugget. I would do those. I would do everything I did, plus I would add the educating myself, and then connecting yourself with mentors or other people, paid or unpaid. It doesn't matter. Like anybody who's walked a few steps before you have seen all the landmines. And if they're willing to, God, why wouldn't you take advantage of it? Yeah.
That's really great advice. What one moment are you most proud of in your life?
Wow. When I was standing on top of Times Square, so 1999 into 2000, when we welcomed the whole new millennium, I worked on the Times Square ball. So the Times Square ball that's dropping now it was manual up to 1999. So there were like 7 guys that actually enrolled it all the way to the top. So I was requested to restore the old ball because they're working on the whole new digital ball. There was a moment when the old ball and the new ball were there together on the rooftop just before they took it down. And so I had my mom. My father had passed away that year. So I had my mom, my 2 children, my husband on top of the Times Square. And there was like a historian recording the whole moment. And so I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, because who would have thought a Korean kid living in Korea would come to America and work on a project like that for a year. And so that was a pretty, proud moment that I felt like at that time I had achieved my father's dream, because his dream was for us to have a better life. And my mom was there, obviously. And so my kids have something to look up to at some point. So I would say there were many moments, but I said that one kind of stuck out on my mind.
That's an incredible moment. So what was your action? What part of helping to restore and bring the new ball to life was that for you?
The old ball had 16,000 rhinestones on the cover of it. And it's been worn over, because there's a whole history about Times Square ball. I don't know if you knew this, because I had no clue of it. I just took no idea why the ball is there, why does it drop, who actually came up with this. So I had to do all of that to really figure out what to do with the old ball, because it's part of our history. So I found out that going back to 1900, every building in America, every tall building in America had a ball on top. And
I didn't know that.
I know, neither did I.
Who knew?
So every ball in America every city had a huge ball on top. And this is before the wristwatches came into fashion. People had those old watches, like pocket watches. That's what they call them, pocket watches. You'd have to wind them up, but then you didn't know what time it was. When they dropped the ball, it was always at noon. They would drop the ball at noon every day. And that's how they synchronized, because when you wind up the watch, it didn't actually last that many hours. So then when the batteries came and all that stuff, it was so uncool to have this ball that dropped every day. It was manually drawn every day. So every building, like, they threw out the ball except the Times Square ball in New York. And it's called the Times Square because that building used to be the home of New York Times. So it's called the Times, we call the New York Times the Times, so it's the Times Square, so the ball. So I helped them restore the old ball. It's in a museum. And I also helped them merchandise things that had to do with the millennium, all the historical moments that Times Square itself had gone through. But there was an auction in conjunction with Vogue, Christie, like an auction house, and Academy Awards or something. Like they raised a lot of money for AMFAR. It was like the first thing. It was all that same year. So I was going to New York every other week from LA with the two kids. It was a lot of work. But so the new ball was designed by Waterford, and that's the one that's actually now being dropped. But I have a great relationship with Times Square. They had a committee of like 30 people, and they went through so many different people, and they didn't want to work with anybody but me for some reason. My father had passed away in January that year. And so I kept telling him, I can't get it. You really need like a whole team of people to work on this, because it is a massive ball. First, the thing is huge. And secondly, I just don't want the responsibility of it. Like I'm a tiny little business, and I just don't want the responsibility of all of that. It's such a huge project, such a historical thing, and I just didn't want to mess it up. And I said, my father had passed away and my mother's very dependent on me, all that. They were like, oh, we'll wait. So I ended up doing all of those projects. It was 1999 was a pretty crazy year.
So they sought you out.
Yeah.
What an honor. What a fabulous story. Wow.
And it came at the end of the podcast. Yeah, I forgot about all that because, like I told you, I'm not like a in-your-face person or anything like that.
That's a phenomenal story. That isn't even the big question that I wanted to ask you, which
now. Okay.
Which now we're getting to the big question. So follow that story up with, what is one thing that no one knows about Victoria?
That is actually, there's a lot probably, because I'm a very private person. So I would say there's a one thing. I don't know. I'm a very private person, but I am what you get, more or less. I would say I am actually a real introvert, because a lot of people think I'm such an extrovert because I'm on TV, can converse with people. But like when I go to a party or something like that, I literally am like sitting on a corner, mostly by myself, because I don't know. A lot of times I go to places and people, if a topic was something I'm very familiar with, and it's not about myself, shining a light on other people kind of thing. If you're talking about Nelson Mandela, or if you're talking about what you're doing with like American Heart Association or whatever charity you're hooked up with, I can converse with you. But when it's like a superficial type thing, then I just don't know how to fake it very much. So I just stay pretty quiet. So it's pretty much, it is what it is. I'm a real introvert. A lot of people think I'm a real extrovert. 24 years of live TV, I think 12,000 hours of live programming, so they think, oh yeah, you're really an expert. It's really not true.
That's completely plausible. I'm just like you. I think I'm an extrovert, and I really am an introvert. I'm a total homebody, and I enjoy it. It's my sacred space.
And my favorite thing, like when I go, a lot of times when I travel in places like that, I actually, like a lot of the trade shows and things, a lot of people actually who know me well would know. I really love room service. I do. Sometimes I'll just ask like a bowl of ice cream or something. And after a whole day of work, I just love like turning on like a black and white TV or something and just go to room service rather than just a big production type thing. I'm a very simple person, and like my dreams are very simple. And if I had no money, I would be the same person. I'm just not I'm not easily shaken. And I think a lot of people think because I'm pretty easygoing that they could push me over. And I think I got really messed up a lot in the beginning of my career. Some of the pretty devastating, I had samples that I designed. They actually made the samples and gave it to competitors and other people. And some of the pieces that they screwed me over with, like they're actually being sold under some celebrity brands without giving me a dime, but I never sued anybody, but I learned. And so now, like, the way I do my CAD CAM and everything is all done modularly, pieces, so no one person actually can get them together until it ends up in California. But yeah, it is what it is.
Oh, Victoria, this has been so much fun having you on the show. And thank you so much for sharing your story, your journey, your life with us. This has been amazing. And what great pieces of advice and value that you've brought to our listeners and to me today. And I thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thank you so much. And for those of you who are really looking to transform your life, listen to as many podcasts as you can, because every week, all of us, Jennifer, you've got some amazing stories on your show, mine. There's a lot of other people who bring you those. I would say that there's a lot of other people. Yeah. And we all have our struggles, and we can share it.
Everyone has a story. I have the wait list for 2022 up right now. So definitely follow both of us. Hit us up if you have a great story. You've got great inspiration, transformational, empowering stories that you'd like to share. We want to help you share them. Yeah.
So come to $1 Million Hobbies, and just if you have an amazing story that worth telling or sharing, and you're willing to share it, just go ahead and do that. It's my only request. And other than that, good luck to you, Jennifer, and everyone else listening.
Thank you so much. And all of Victoria's links and her website, again, will be in our show notes. So you can head over to jenniferpilates.com and check all of those out. So again, thank you so much, Victoria, for being here. And as we say, until next time. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to Empowered Within with Jennifer Pilates. Your feedback is important. It helps me to connect with you and gives me insight into who you are and what you're enjoying about the show. For today's show notes and discount codes from today's sponsors, head over to jenniferpilates.com. Until next time, may you live an empowered life from within.